Morning, everybody. I know nothing stirs the soul like a discussion of knowledge bases first thing in the morning. This presentation is based on a relatively simple premise that the current inaccuracies of data in the supply chain are not only detrimental to the user experience and the ability of institutions to effectively manage their collections, but resolving them is increasingly unsustainable at the institutional level. In this presentation, I hope to explain how two projects, KB+ in the UK and GOKb in the USA, increasingly working in cooperation with a range of other partners, are adopting a community-centric approach to try and resolve these issues, as well as broaden out the scope and utility of knowledge bases. It's our belief that it's only through collaboration at a wide range of levels and on a number of fronts that these challenges can be overcome. Just a warning sort of at the start, nothing that I'm going to say here is rocket science. All of the themes that I'm going to talk about have come up in a number of the presentations that have been on this stage and in the other sessions. I myself, I'm not from a library technology background. Before I was involved with this, I was working in licensing and negotiation. And from a JISC collections perspective, it's increasingly through our licensing and negotiation efforts that we try and resolve some of these issues. Just to talk a bit about KB+ and GOKb at the start. KB+ is a new service from JISC Collections to build a shared academic knowledge base for the UK academic community. It's funded via HEFG's Universities Modernisation Fund in response to studies by JISC and SCONL that found at library director level there was a demand for greater shared services in the areas of library management systems, e-resource management, and licensing. For KB+, we're concerned with capturing and representing information that institutions need to manage their subscribed resources, so things like journal packages, e-resource licenses, institutional entitlement information. It's about providing a one-stop shop of this information for UK institutions, but also making sure that this information is widely available throughout the supply chain to any other systems vendors and services which require it. GOKb is a sister project of KB+ in the US, funded by the Mellon Foundation, and the aim is to create a community-sourced knowledge base, primarily for users of Kuali's open library environment. However, like KB+, with which it's worked on software development and data architecture, it intends to make all of the data it collects available under an open license so it can be used in other systems. Whilst both of us have a shared interest in package information, license information, GOKb is less concerned with institutional level data. It's focused more on the global level information. So the data that we're collecting complements each other, and we're both sources of information for each other and users of our own of information by each other. So why are we doing this, and what are the problems that we're trying to address? The first one I want to talk about is data quality and availability. There are so many problems with the data in the supply chain that I often don't know where to start, though this quote from a librarian that I met sort of goes some way to encapsulating some of them. The first issue is around accuracy. It's slightly strange, but many publishers don't really seem to understand what they publish. Just to give some examples of this, one of my colleagues on KB+ has now spent over 70 hours creating a title list for one of the major STM publishers, which they cannot generate from their own systems and services. We have other publishers who now use our data to tell them what they publish. We have a number of publishers who run apparently multiple lists of what they publish available to only different parts of the organization. So you have the sales team has access to one list, then you have the back office who has access to another list. One publisher told me that they would give me the real list and not the stuff that the sales team had access to. Yesterday I was talking to a former publisher who said that they used to run a sort of a black market within the sales team of different lists from across different territories in Europe and overseas, seeing who had the best list for any particular point in time, which they would then share with each other. Related to that, we have the issue of availability. Not all of the parts of the supply chain have access to all of the information that they need, and if publishers are unsure about what they're publishing, they're also unsure about what you're buying, both now and in the past, something which librarians seem hard to find out as well. Add to that the fact that there are often entire classes of information which are entirely absent from the supply chain in any way that is meaningfully useful for systems. And here specifically I'm thinking of license information, which is one of the things in JISC collections we're most commonly asked about, but which there are no ready sources of. So you can see that there are gaps in our knowledge of what's available, what we've bought, and what we can do with it. The next issue is that of duplication of effort. Marshall Breeding did a study in 2012, I think, for the Swedish consortium, looking at and comparing the major knowledge bases. And he said that the big four knowledge bases have about 80 FTE between them spent working on the data. Yet there were no significant differences in the quality and the comprehensiveness and the coverage of those knowledge bases. So that's essentially duplication of effort, providing the same information across different systems and silos. Add to that the amount of time and effort which is going on in institutions to correct, add information, update knowledge bases. And you have a huge amount of duplication of effort on the systems vendor side and on the library side, not just in the UK, but globally. Now, that duplication of effort may have been tenable in other times, but certainly today, and the focus on the user experience and things like that, it's really not sustainable any longer to have academic librarians' time taken up working on maintaining, correcting what is essentially the same information, commodity information, that could be available to everybody just once, one point of contact. Then there's interoperability. As anyone from an institution will know, they're managing any number of silos which all give them a slightly different view of what they subscribe to and what they have access to. There's the publisher view, the subscription agent's view, your ERM's view, what the link resolver tells you, what your filing cabinets have got, spreadsheets, library staff themselves, who are often one of the main sources, the only people in the institution who understand what they've signed up to, why they signed up to it, where all the licenses are stored, etc. What the consortia, what people like JISC Collections are saying you have access to. To build up the complete picture, you're trying to reconcile all of these different silos of information which often don't communicate with each other very well, if at all. So what do we mean by maximising the knowledge base, and what are the approaches that we want to take? The four that I'm going to talk about today, and there are others, and I'm not really going to talk about the technology because there are much more intelligent people who understand it more than I do. Open data, collaborative communities, enriched information, and standards and best practice. So why is open data so important to us? We're not particularly interested in open data for any sort of, JISC ideological interest in openness and things like that. From a KB Plus perspective, from a GOKb perspective, openness of the data is the only thing which allows us to undertake the work in the way that we want. It allows us to share and collaborate with everyone and anyone that we need to. It can help us improve the accuracy by exposing the data to review. It means we can share that publication information with any systems, services, any vendors we want to. And, OCLC, EBSCO, Serial Solutions, Ex Libris, they're all taking some of the data which we're making available, be it license information, publication information, already using it to enhance their knowledge bases. It reduces the burden on any one element of the supply chain. People have other sources, other places they can go to find the information they need. Our efforts aren't tied into any one specific system or service. It doesn't matter if we're Serial Solutions customers, Ex Libris customers, etc. We can work collaboratively on the data, we can make it available. And frankly, it makes it easier for us to seed and provide information to other knowledge bases, which may have other reasons, other interests that they want to deal with. One of the common misconceptions about this work is that we just want to reproduce what is already there, just slightly more accurately. Now, this is part of the story, but by working at different levels, we believe that we can actually achieve more. We can contribute to and make use of globally relevant information, and we see GOKb as the venue for that, of title information, publisher information, platform information, and standard license agreements. But we also know that there are important differences at the national and institutional level that need to be managed appropriately. Some examples of this might be details of national purchases of journal archives or NESD agreements, for example, which differ from what is globally available from a publisher. One might also add in specific national licenses, such as the JISC model license, consortially negotiated entitlements that differ from the standard, or even that content is made available on different platforms in different territories, so there are different URLs and access mechanisms. Organisations such as JISC Collection can help add important context to national level information by providing the benefit of their direct experience and involvement in the licensing and negotiation and procurement process. But there's also the local institutional world of local holdings, financial data and documentation. But what we're trying to achieve is the minimisation of any activity that occurs at the institutional level, wherever commonality of data means that work could have been undertaken further up the supply chain. And it's also important to us that we share this appropriately with those third-party systems, services and vendors wherever and whenever they need it. One of the main critiques of things like GOKb and KB+ and other initiatives is, given the limited resources available to us, how can we hope to offer the comprehensiveness of the existing major knowledge bases? And it is a fair point when you consider that people have maybe 30-odd FTE working on just the data. However, to a certain extent, it also misses the point. At a national level, there are already tens of librarians working by themselves or in groups aligned to products to maintain and update knowledge bases. This effort could be coordinated, bringing benefits to all, reducing individual work, eliminating duplication of effort across institutions. Similarly, we can collaborate internationally and maximise any network effects. The groups listed above, from the UK, France, Germany, Canada, Japan, Sweden, China, and indeed others to join, as well as the US, are already actively looking at how we can collaborate to share data, manage data, make data available openly. Because we use open data and set no limits on what each of us can do with the data, we're free to go on establishing new partnerships with any group that wants to see this type of information openly available to all, irrespective of platform, system, service or vendor. We don't all need to do everything. We can divide up the work to reflect different areas of expertise and according to different national priorities. But it is an essential part of the sustainability. Next, I kind of want to talk about enriched information. We want the data that we have to work harder for us. There's a range of data services available to all of us, and all of which contain part of their overall picture. But by bringing that data together in the right context, then we can get the answers to inform the decisions that we need to take. So some examples, for example, might be holdings and licensing information from KB+ brought together with preservation information from the Keeper's Registry to inform decisions on things like print disposal. Similarly, we're supplying, and we hope to supply JISC with improved and more accurate package level information to inform the work that does inform collection development. And we're also experimenting with pulling in data from Sherpa Romeo, so that we can start to have information on specific open access policies, etc., at the title level within Knowledge Base Plus. The data sources aren't really important here. These are just some that we're currently investigating or actively working with. It's the fact that by bringing multiple sources of information together, there's more than we can learn than we could have done from any one of them acting on their own. So far, I've concentrated on the data, its management, improvement, and collation. But underpinning all of this is human interaction and relationships. Anyone who's ever read a license will know that what's written down on the page is often only half the story. Experience, knowledge of librarians, knowledge of the process of the license are all needed in order to apply that information correctly and make sure that maximum access is available to users. All too often, individuals within institutions are subjecting themselves to stress and worry because they don't know who to ask or even what to ask. There are still constant studies going on about walk-in access and whether it's permitted or not, despite the fact that I know of no publisher who really doesn't want open access, walk-in access to be provided. So how can we maximise that collective knowledge within the community, making sure that the knowledge of people in organisations like JISC Collections, the knowledge of librarians is shared, is made available, filling in the gaps, adding context, responding to the questions that everybody has collectively, collaboratively. I also want to talk about standards and best practice a bit. The use of standards and identifiers and compliance with best practice guidelines were all fundamental to our concept of how to resolve the issues that we faced in this area. Their implementation supports accuracy, availability, and the exchange of data, which is what KB Plus and GOKb are all about. Now, when I started the KB Plus project, I had this rather naive view that we could just use standards, etc., to minimize the need for any human manipulation of the data, creating nice machine-based processes for the collation, maintenance, and distribution. And I was very misguided. There are two problems in all of this. The first is that often, even where a standard exists, it's not been implemented widely or indeed at all. And this is particularly the case with some of the ONIX standards, which are very rich, but seldom made full use of. The second problem is that often, even when they have been implemented, there are still ongoing problems with the accuracy and the quality of the data itself. It's not enough to just put data in the right format. It needs to be the right data and all of the data. So we've had to be practical. Where they're there, we'll try to use them, as in the case of KBART. Sometimes we'll put the data into the required standards ourselves, again, as in the case of KBART and things like ONIX Publisher's License. Other times we're mapping identifiers together so that we can build up an increasingly accurate picture, so things like the Ringgold identifiers and hopefully ISNI and things like that in the future. However, none of this takes away from the fact that we're still having to do far too much of this work ourselves. It would be much more sensible if this work was undertaken at source by the publishers who are publishing, making this data available. I would say these are some of the organisations that we're working with, and I think that these are some of the standards which publishers should be taking note of. I've included Counter there because that is one which has had huge take-up and success, and I think it does reflect a certain aspect that standards get adopted when groups feel that they have a direct benefit from it. And I would say that actually there is benefit from adopting all of these in terms of providing wider access to the materials, driving usage, improving the ability of libraries to engage with collection development, etc. So finally, I wanted to revisit something which Ben Showers, a colleague of mine at JISC Collections, said to this conference last year when he urged the conference to set its data free. Now, we're big believers in open data, in KB Plus and GOKb, and we're using open licenses to make as much of that data as we can openly available. However, we're also big believers in accurate data. So as much as we'd like people to let their data be promiscuous, we'd also be grateful if they could give it a quick tidy up first so it looks presentable and doesn't get knocked back, because rejection hurts. And thanks very much indeed.